I just want to mention, a moment ago I said I was browsing Twitter, and it's because I was sent a message that Tucker Carlson was having a unique conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to play for you this clip I just pulled up. Tucker Carlson, some good news before we go. A little justice finally. The Twitter account Libs of TikTok just surpassed 1 million followers on Twitter. It's about a minute long. I grant you this clip from Tucker Carlson. It just aired tonight.
Some good news before we go. A little justice finally. The Twitter account Libs of TikTok just surpassed 1 million followers on Twitter. Now, it was just last week that the Washington Post and its reporter Taylor Lorenz tried to destroy the person who runs that account. But it turns out a lot of people actually want the account because they want to know what their teachers are doing in the classroom. It's not an attack on anybody. It's called transparency. So Tim Pool of YouTube fame, with the help of the Daily Wire's Jeremy Boring, just put up a billboard in Times Square highlighting what the Washington Post tried to do to the founder of Libs of TikTok, and you're seeing it on your screen. Now, of course, as predicted, Taylor Lorenz says she's the victim here. Of course, this billboard is so undeniably idiotic, it's hilarious, but don't forget these campaigns have a much darker and more violent side. I'm grateful to be at a newsroom that recognizes these bad faith, politically motivated attacks and has a strong security team. So she exposes the founder of Libs of TikTok to violence, but when you say her name, you're a terrorist. In other words, stop hurting me, she says as she punches you in the face. These people are balls.
Well, this is what they were saying about Vijaya, right? Yeah. They were saying that, Sagar and Cernovich get contacted by the Washington Post saying, what was your intention by including the name of the Twitter official in your reporting? And first of all, they were all commenting on this Politico story that she apparently had broke down in tears during one of the meetings. So commenting on that story and then having Elon Musk respond to them somehow became them attacking her. I actually looked this up earlier today. And a lot of those websites, it's hard to tell when they do these estimates. She's worth anywhere between $30 and $70 million.
Who is?
Vijaya.
Wow.
78. I have the numbers actually right here.
Yeah, but each website has like a different, 70, estimation of it. So it depends on which one you look at. Right. So I'm giving the swath, right? This is a major public figure who has major control in the world, who's worth tons of money, but can't talk about her because that's an attack.
Well, from wallmine.com, she has over $38 million worth of Twitter stock, stock's worth over $28 million. She makes $8 million a year as chief legal officer and secretary at Twitter. It's $7.9 million.
$8 million a year.
She's a
Don't
secretary
you talk about
too.
her, Ian. Don't you talk about her, Ian.
Well, she's about to get fired and have a nice package.
That's
Goodbye.
Right.
Maybe he'll keep her on, but
you're harassing her.
Wow, the misogyny
right
now.
I only take issue with the things she's done and said. She's cool.
Here's a prediction. I think if Twitter really is allowed to become an organic thing, the big story is going to be how everything changes when you see it reflect what people really think and feel. Instead of this balanced conversation, as maybe Tim suggested, it's not so balanced. And I'm not saying all views shouldn't be heard. They should be heard. But I think people will be surprised how small some of this group becomes and how big other groups become that you haven't heard much from because they've been suppressed.
A problem that comes up on social media since the beginning, it seems like, is that the most popular thing gets more traction than everything else because it goes up on trending, and then they're like, what's that? And then it just snowballs things. Like crazy things can snowball, like the swastika. Hitler didn't, nothing wrong.
That's true always with or without social media.
Unless you have chronological feeds, because then you're just seeing what just got posted by the people you're following.
But people can share.
And then people share popular stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when they do, the more you share it, the more people see it.
Yeah, across time, you're right. Like the most famous people get free stuff. Like that makes it so weird.
Oh, I mean, look, if you're rich, the bank gives you money. If you're poor, they take it from you.
It's same with social media attraction. It's very weird.
It's almost like physics. I mean, look, yeah. I've heard the joke where, they say when you're rich, the bank will give you money, but when you're poor, they say you owe us money. And I'm like, well, here's why that happens. When you have very little money in the account, they have to pay to maintain it. And so it's draining their money to run an account for you that's not being utilized enough, so they charge you for it. It seems counterintuitive. If you're very wealthy, you're giving them access to capital for whatever it is they want to do.
And the popular posts on Twitter are getting more eyeballs on Twitter, so that's why they want the popular stuff at the top, similar to having rich people. And it
creates a big cycle. So it's always that way. There's some attempt at raising things up. The problem is Twitter wasn't doing it. Twitter inverted it. Twitter was deciding what was going to be. YouTube is deciding for political reasons. If everything was based off merit, I'll tell you, YouTube would be a wacky place. All of the thumbnails would be big-titted women, because that's, I'm not trying to be crass, that's literally what it was. All of these big creators in the early days of YouTube realized that if I want views, the thumbnails got to get people to click on it.
Well, wasn't there the thing where that was the thumbnail, but the video actually had nothing to do with it?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Or what they would do is they'd be like, I'm going to comment on this video game story, but first, yo, we got this story about the supermodel. Isn't she looking great? Yes, the supermodel did these things. Anyway, on to the video games. That way they could justify, well, I did talk about her. Because YouTube tried cracking down, saying, okay, you can't use thumbnails that do not represent the video. It's causing us problems. So YouTube slowly starts making rules to try and deal with the insanity that is this platform. And eventually they say, okay, the other problem we have is people are just posting 2-minute clips. We need people to post long form stuff. So they make this algorithm that promotes videos over 10 minutes, videos with high engagement rates. And what do they get? They were hoping for Game of Thrones. They got Culture Wars. And they don't like it. Then they realized, hey, wait a minute, all of these conservative, anti-woke, and libertarian personalities are getting a lot of traction because people like their ideas. Ban them. And they did. This show was shadow banned. You could not Google search it for a year and a half. And then one day I mentioned on this show, I was like, oh yeah, Google shadow banned us. Like if you were to Google the title of one of our clips, the Facebook version would come up and the YouTube would not. On Google. That seems to make no sense. And then one day everyone's like, Tim, they removed it. You can be searched again. There was a hit piece in the media. And then all of a sudden, a wave of YouTubers who were deemed wrong thinkers were purged from the recommendation algorithm because someone just said, I don't like it. We can't live that way.
I'm like a peacetime strategist. I'm not a wartime strategist. But in my mind, I think we have to build a system where that can never happen again. But then I'm like, well, in times of war, you have to be able to censor the enemy. At least if you don't, the enemy's propaganda will convince your people to kill you. So you.
That's what's. I honestly, I think Chinese propaganda is destroying us. Russia tried. They overreact as to what Russia was actually doing, but I think China's actually way more successful. And the reality is, yeah, we had an office of censorship in World War II because there were concerns that journalists, particularly, would put out information that would harm the war effort. Speaking of that, I got, this is amazing, Life magazine from March 1944, which is, I think it's 44, but it's a magazine from 3 months before D-Day. In the magazine, they show all of the American military power in the UK. It's fascinating. They said the United States is helping the UK in the event Germany may try to invade. Only what was actually happening was the US was preparing to storm the beaches of Normandy, stage D-Day. But they could not say that in the press. So in this magazine at the time, they're like, we're here with our military to protect Britain.
Fake news.
So
it was fake news.
So I mean, this is actually something I studied when I was in the IC. I went through classes on this. They call it denial and deception operations. So Germany knew that there was an invasion coming and that it was going to be the Americans. The question was, where would the invasion come from? And they conducted so many deception operations because they knew that the Germans had spies throughout Europe. So what did they do? They knew that they sent Patton to Europe because they knew Patton, they sent him to the UK because they knew that the Germans would be watching him. But where do they send him? They don't send him across from Normandy. They send him to Dover. Now, Dover is directly across from Calais. This is the shortest point on the English Channel. This is actually where the Channel Tunnel is because it's the shortest point. Normandy is where the invasion actually was. It's not where you'd expect. They send Patton over to Dover. What do? They get soldiers and they make fake uniform patches for them, depicting fake units. They have these soldiers go into town and pretend that there's a massive buildup. They start renting hotel rooms. They start buying food. They start sending messages. They're going all throughout town, and they act as if they're all members of various units that are there in the town, and yet none of it's real. So the German high command is getting all these reports back saying, hey, there's a ton of stuff going on in Calais, right across from Calais, from this place called Dover. We think it's coming. What did the Germans do? they realize that they can't put all their eggs in one basket. They split the forces along the North Atlantic Wall from Normandy and Calais. The deception, and there's way more to it than this. There's so much to get into. They used a dead body at one point, and they put like fake documents. The British did this.
Right.
They put fake documents in the body, drop him off of the Rock of Gibraltar. He washes up on Spain. The Spanish find the guy. They hand him to the German embassy. They say, "Look, we've got these documents. See, we know all about this invasion. It's coming." And then that makes its way up. Hitler splits the forces. The deception operation was so extensive that even after D-Day, they kept the forces split because they still thought another invasion was going to be coming. They thought Normandy was a feint. They thought that was the decoy, and an even bigger one was still coming.
Wow.
It's incredible. This is one of the greatest military deception operations that you're talking about there that's ever been conducted.
You think if Hitler wasn't a meth head that he would have taken the troops out of Calais?
Well, no, I mean, I think it's game theory. Right, I think it's game theory that if you don't have, keep in mind, this isn't an age of satellites and thermal, resonance imaging, IR, FLIR, any drones, etc. So you really don't know. So you're going based off of you've got the Enigma machine to send encrypted messages, but that's already broken, right? Even though he didn't know that. And then you've got these human intelligence reports. So game theory suggests that if you've got what appears to be credible information of two invasion forces, you've got to prepare for both.
All right.
Well, how about the theory that, and I understand some of this information has to be controlled. Who do you trust to control it? Do you trust your own government to be doing the right thing during times of war?
No.
And I'm going back to CNN. I worked there back when it was a news organization in 1990.
Wow.
Long time ago. And Gulf War I was happening, actually 1989. I think it was around August when Iraq invaded Kuwait. And we spent 3 years, I think, doing great coverage, but listening to almost every day Saddam Hussein's press guy give his view. And I think it would be, not accurate to say that the people watching CNN were convinced by Iraq's press guy to take Iraq's viewpoint. They weren't. But it was valuable to see how they were portraying their side and their viewpoint. I think we have a right to see it. I think it informs us to see and hear that. And the notion that I've heard lately that we shouldn't even hear certain viewpoints or enemies, or we wouldn't want to hear from Hitler. I'd want to hear from Hitler. I'm not saying that I would want to believe what Hitler says. I would love to hear his justifications and his explanations. I don't think that should be banned. I mean, maybe there's some stuff that should be.
Yeah, the cuties, the argument is cuties. Like, it's so vile that in order to, just to see it is the corruption. So, like, just to listen to Joseph Goebbels speak about the Jews was, like, enough to have a weak mind corrupted by it. So they're like, some people can handle it, like you are able to look at it logically.
Well,
but it's not up to
cuties is
us to
exploitation
decide
of
which people can handle it, in my view.
underage children.
Cuties actually had little girls doing
Yeah,
these things.
that's actual exploitation.
And you could say
of
that
little,
what
that's
Joseph
not
Goebbels
speech.
was doing was, vile, the way he was dehumanizing people.
The Nazis literally
No, but cuties
killed
wasn't
the
speech.
people.
Cuties wasn't speech. That's a completely different
I don't know.
thing.
I think a movie could be considered a form of speech.
No, that's
Ian,
actual actors.
What about an internet video of you talking?
Ian,
Is that
hold on,
speech?
hold on.
Yes.
In the film, they took little girls. These are real human beings, and they had them perform lewd dances for an extended period of time and be trained to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That is not speech.
Oh, well, self-expression. I'm not sure.
No.
It's
If an
graphic,
adult
it's imagery,
adult
yeah.
human male takes a little girl into a back room and teaches her extensive lewd dancing,
So are you
is not
suggesting?
speech.
Are you suggesting that imagery is not a form of speech?
Ian, what are you talking about?
Because if someone posts a
All
picture
right,
on Twitter,
let's slow down again. A man, several of them, took little girls into a room to teach them lewd sexualized dancing.
Wait, don't forget. They were paid.
And they were paid to do it.
Yikes.
That is not speech.
yeah, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the
We are.
portrayal of the movie.
Right,
itself.
we are. And that's the problem. Ian,
I know you are, but that's
can't-
not what I brought up cuties for. It's not about that.
You cannot sexually abuse children to make a piece of speech.
Well, showing the movie is not the abuse. They
Actually, it is.
children.
Actually, it is. No, this comes up in the child porn arguments, and this was in Ketanji Brown Jackson stuff. Is that every time you show the image, every time another person sees it, the child is then re-exploited.
Okay, so
Every
that argument
single
could be
time.
taken to Joseph Goebbels talking about the dehumanization of Jews. Every time you listen to him say that, he's doing something that's more than speech.
No, Ian.
This is the argument anyway. My point is.
You don't understand. If you go out and you say murder is wrong, that's speech. Okay. If you go out, film yourself killing someone, and then show the video saying that was wrong what I did, it's like, okay, that video is a depiction of someone being murdered, of you committing a crime. That is not speech. That is
journalistic integrity. If you as a journalist saw a video of me killing someone and showed people, you wouldn't be on the hook.
That's not what we're talking about.
I'm talking about other people showing video that might be harmful to the mind. You need to, I don't know if you need to censor it, but if you don't censor it, you can get really dangerous.
The difference between Goebbels and Cuties is that, first of all, he was a Nazi and the Nazis did those things. But if you're referring to someone who is advocating for genocide, the question is, are they actively participating in doing it or just expressing themselves? When you're talking about Cuties, you're talking about people who actively participated in exploiting little girls.
So we talk about genocide, just talking about it versus doing it. I
Well,
agree,
okay, how about this then? How about let's take it out of the abstract. Facebook said that in certain areas of Europe, because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict right now, they are going to take off their normal ban on calls for violence as long as you're calling for violence up to and including murder of anyone of Russian ethnicity.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are weapons. These social media networks are weapons.
So they are basically saying that, no, I don't know whether or not that includes genocide, but that certainly sounds like genocide, right? If you're, basing this on, someone's ethnicity. So Facebook has come out and said, we will agree with this and we will allow this under these circumstances.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that alluding to genocide is legal under our free speech laws. But as long as it's not an imminent threat, like on Wednesday at 2 p.m., go do that, then you're not inciting anything.
Yeah,
but if you're just saying, I want them to be gone, that I believe is legal.
It is legal speech.
So on Twitter, if that goes up and then it gets 1 million retweets and then all these people are like, yeah, I think that too, you're creating a dangerous precedent.
Well, this was in the TED Talk that Musk was doing. The guy interviewing him said, some hate speech is legal. Right? I hate broccoli. Right? I hate ice cream. Whatever. Right? Like you're allowed to say that you hate certain things. So you take the emotion out of it.
So Elon, I don't think he says he's a free speech absolutist, but I don't think Twitter will be absolutely free speech. That's absurd. Doxing's not going to be allowed. And you going on Twitter and advocating for genocide, I do not believe Elon will allow. He's going to be like, no. Because you're calling for violence. And it's on the line.
But what happens then when it comes into the Israel-Palestine question? Because Palestinians constantly say that they want to see the country of Israel wiped off the map. From the river to the sea.
Yep.
Right.
And prominent blue check journalists have said this.
Yes. I was told that was a mistranslation, that they actually want to legally remove the borders and undo the country's formation, not kill the people and destroy it all. This is what Ahmadinejad, I think that's his name, with the president of Iran for a while, was saying, I want Israel wiped off the map, but he was saying that he wants it literally redrawn and taken away because it was done unjustly. Not that he wanted to kill them, but the media was like, oh, he wants them wiped out? Now let's make him a villain and say that he wants to hurt people.
I don't think there's any point in trying to dissect the Israel-Palestine conflict in the span of a few minutes.
It's too much.
Of course there's going to be a guy who says, this is what we really mean. Rest assured, the Attkisson brigades are not agreeing with that assessment. And when they fire a rocket out of a children's hospital at civilians in Israel, it's because they want to wipe them out.
Not just that, out of the basement of the AP's headquarters,
Yeah.
where they were operating, and the AP had an office in Gaza City co-located with one of these rocket bases and never once reported on it.
Yeah. So these are tough questions. Some of these are hard calls. But let's go back to the absurdity of what's become with social media and the internet. You brought up Goebbels. One of the only things I know I was banned for on Facebook was fairly recently. I posted a Goebbels quote that simply said something like, with no context, it is quite possible, knowing the psychology of the audience, to convince people that a square is in fact a circle. That could mean anything. It could be a criticism. It could be aimed. I knew what I was aiming it as, but I simply did a historic quote.
Right.
And I got pulled down, my account. And I thought it was a mistake and there was no way to appeal. And I kept checking back. And a week later, I'm back up. And I said, there must have been some mistake. All I did was quote historically Hitler's propaganda saying that people can be convinced. And I got banned again. I was gone for another 10 days. So you can't even say something like that.
Tim, how many lights are there in this room?
What are the lights?
Four lights.
Yeah, so what I do is I like to tweet, under no pretext shall the right of the people to keep and bear arms be infringed. It must be frustrated by force if necessary.
Heck yeah.
And that's from Karl Miss Jeffrey Marx.
Does that get you banned?
Well, I feel like if you quote the Second Amendment, you might, but if you quote Marx, you probably won't. So Karl Marx has the quote, under no pretext shall the workers relinquish the right to bear arms. It should be frustrated. Any attempt to take this, weapons from the people should
Chairman
be,
Mao, political power grows from the barrel of a gun.
Yeah. So my point is I mix them together, and I'm like, hey, look, it's not left or right. It's liberty, But I guess the authoritarians say that too, and then take your guns once they gain power. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.